Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Index Office Hours. Today is November the 20th, and oh no, it's not. Well, in my part of the world, it is, but actually for you guys, it's the 19th, I believe. I'm in Thailand at the moment for DevCon, and I realized that it's midnight for me. Yeah, it's the 19th for you guys, so it's midnight for me right now. And yeah, it's the 19th for you guys who are probably closer to 5 p.m. UTC. There you go. But it is 184, index office hours 184, which is the case for all of us. That's not affected by time zones. And if anyone is new to index office hours, this is the town square for graph ecosystem participants to come together and discuss the most important and relevant topics for indexers. This is a conversation, as always, and we love participation. So if you'd like to get involved in today's conversation, feel free to do so via voice or text. In fact, we have pretty much a Q&A style conversation in terms of open discussion for TAP. So if you have any TAP-related questions, then yeah, this is the time to share them. So yeah, if you want to do that and you're having challenges with audio, let me know. I will get that sorted for you. And as a reminder, this is a session that will be recorded and posted onto public channels like YouTube. So if you are concerned about privacy, please bear that in mind. And with that, let's get into the latest GRT IQ episode for the opening remarks. We have Jeroen Jeroen, who is the chief, yeah, I tried my best. The Chief Operating Officer, Persistence Labs. And he talks a bit about his journey, which starts off in traditional finance and consulting, and then making a leap into the world of Web3 in terms of starting a company. He's also based in Singapore, so he talks a bit about his experience founding in Singapore, the crypto ecosystem there. In specific, he shares his perspective on the Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem. So if you're interested in learning more about his story, his perspective on the utility of Bitcoin through interoperable layer twos and interesting DeFi applications, then go ahead and check out that episode there. Which boom, uh, where are you, Nick? Yeah, where's Nick? When you need him, huh? um, I'm sure he'll join us at some point. But there you go. That's the episode there. Thanks for posting both the agenda and the link to the episode there, Juan. Thank you very much. And with that, I will hand over to Anna for our regularly scheduled Reaper Watch section.
Thank you, Abel, and hello, everyone. On Reaper Watch today, we have had on execution layer client a new release from Get. So this is version 1.4.12. This release removes the deprecated personal RPC namespace and the unlock CLI argument, indicating significant changes in key management. It also includes other optimizations, database improvements, and bug fixes with some breaking changes for tracer configuration. The urgency indicator for this release is yellow, so update at your own in your own time. Then we have a new release for Wrath. This is version 1.1.2. This includes performance improvements and bug fixes with a notable readiness for Holocene hard fork. So these changes specifically optimize payload job fetching and resolve pending transaction ordering, making it a critical release for OP red users. So this is a urgency indicator red. You need to update it as soon as possible. Firehouse Ethereum new release 2.8.0, which contains a nil safety check that has been integrated into combined filter to enhance stability during transaction processing. Also, updates to substreams and de-metering that include improvements for the metering functionality. Also, a yellow urgency indicator, so upgrade in your own time. Here we also have an Avalanche new release, so 1.11.13 introduces new API for the platform, some significant fixes for RPC chain VM metrics initialization, and some compatibility improvements. You are encouraged to update, but it's still a yellow urgency, so in your own time. Then we have on the graph stack 2 new releases. So for indexer service and agent, so TypeScript version, we have release number 0.21.8, which includes minor updates to improve UI, user interface by toning down subgraph height violation messages, and also a fix for the polling interval argument in the indexing agent. These changes are not critical, so upgrade in your own time. And finally, on the indexer service and tap agent Rust version, we have a new indexer tap agent version 1.7.3, which addresses a bug by removing the escrow adapter check, which may affect transaction processing. All operators should review this change and um, make sure that everything works as expected. This is an important fix, so make sure you update very soon. And that's all I have for report. I'm gonna hand over to Juan since
Thanks,
there are
Anna.
no comments.
Okay, getting into protocol watch, we have a few things to cover. First of all, as always, forum governance. We have two things here. One is enhancing arbitration in the graph, task force launch, arbitration council expansion, and processes update. This is essentially a thread to kind of like launch the arbitration task force and explain a little bit of the arbitration council expansion. If you're interested in that, there's a little bit more context in the thread itself. But essentially, it is what it sounds like. There's going to be a little bit of an expansion on the people working with arbitration to make sure that arbitration works as we expect it to be working. There's also another arbitration-related thread, which is request for information about dispute GDR 19. This is a weird one because it's essentially the same one as the previous one that we were discussing, where an indexer was closing with the same POI. After being slashed, it seems that the indexer just continues with the same behavior. So another dispute was open, and we are, waiting for the indexer to say something. But it seems that if there's no, response from the indexer as to why he's doing that, it's gonna end with the same result. So yeah, those are the two things for forum governance. For forum research, we don't have any new updates since last IOH. For the contracts repository, we have a few PRs, mainly a few chore PRs like using hard hat secure accounts for non-local chains, bumping some versions, as well as some fixes like adding missing parameters to the deploy script. But yeah, that's pretty much it. For network subgraphs, we don't have any new updates. The last one was an EVO update, which we covered last week. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And since Paka seems to say that there are no updates from him, I'm going to be handing over to Abel now.
Alrighty, thank you both for your respective sections there. So, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, we are going to dedicate this particular IOH purely to TAP. So, many of you know that we have this migration happening, and actually, some of you are having some issues, have some questions. And so, Anna had the great idea of suggesting that we dedicate a specific session to tap. So we had the good fortune of having Anna with us today, Gustavo, and hopefully Vince, if he's here. Is Vince here? I can't see him, but or maybe he has a name that I'm unaware of on Discord. In any case, we have Anna and Gustavo, so feel free to hop in and take the lead, guys.
Thank you. We also have Josh and Mark Andre, and I think Josh, you're playing with this as well. So any questions or anything, please ask away. Okay, I'm just gonna share my screen because I made some notes, but this is not this. We want to have this as very Q&A and call in as well. Awesome. Okay. Quickly sharing my screen. Okay, so you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can indeed.
You can see my Notion?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so first of all, there's a deadline for everyone needing to migrate to TAP. So this is 3rd of December 2024. If you forget about this deadline, we've added a banner on 𝗨𝗂𝗟𝗶𝗀 so that you remember. Okay, so in terms of what we're talking about, if we start really quickly with what is TAP, TAP is just a system, so timeline aggregation protocol that replaces the older scalar payment system. It features super efficient micropayments. It reduces some on-chain transactions and gives indexers controls over receipts. It also enables decentralized gateways by allowing indexers to accept queries from multiple gateways. And this has been one of the things that has been confusing some of us. So we'll talk in more detail about this. But in terms of what we actually do on the TAP migration from a technical point of view, from an implementation, we are basically upgrading the indexer agent version. So it needs to be 0.21.4 or more recent indexer agent version. And we are replacing indexer service with the indexer service that comes from the TypeScript repo with indexer service from Rust repo. And we're also adding a new version, which is indexer tap agent. And a lot of this, what we're going to cover, is about that configuration. In terms of what you can use to get started, so we have a Launchpad chart with Graph Network Indexer that is now supporting the TAP component. So we've added additional component and we've added the boilerplate config, and you can easily use that. The 𝗨𝘀𝗂𝗧𝗪, sorry, there's a typo here, but 𝗨𝘀𝗧𝗪 stack has also been updated to use TAP. So you can use that if you're using Docker Compose. And then there is migration guide on the docs. So I'm just gonna copy that. Yes, I'm just gonna stop to address some of the questions because we want this to be super interactive. So what happens if an indexer misses the deadline? I'm not 100% sure. I'm wondering if anyone else knows. I just know it's bad, but I don't know what happens.
So the gateway currently serves both receipts for Scalar and TAP. Once we reach the deadline, the gateway will remove the code to send queries to other indexers. It will only support TAP receipts. So if you have a version that is less than 1.0, you won't receive queries anymore.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, if you want to keep on getting queries, you need to migrate. And then the gateway will not route any new queries. Yeah, that's the same question. Any way to tell what percentage of indexers have already moved to indexer TAP? There is a way. The 𝗨𝗂𝗪𝗧𝗪, that's one way. If you click on any of the indexers on 𝗨𝗪𝗧𝗪, we've added a banner that says whether they've migrated or not. So if they have TAP ready, it means they've migrated. There's also another way is by that's for indexers that you don't for not sorry, for indexers you haven't deployed yourself, but in general you can tell by the version an indexer runs. So indexer service and indexer tap agent versions up 1 and up are all migrated. But yeah, any.
So we are at Semiotic, we are tracking this number carefully, closely. So we do basically that, and we check all of the indexers and if they're running version 1.0 greater than 1.0 or not. So the current numbers are we have out of the 88 indexers that we are tracking, we have 30 of them that are already running version 1.0 and above, which means it's about 34% of the percentage of indexers. But we are also tracking the amount of queries that each of them ran served to the last month. So we are currently at 81.6% of percentage of query running through TAP. So yes, that's it.
So I think what you're saying is that most of the indexers that have the most query volume, the highest query volumes, have already upgraded.
Yes. The top 10 indexers, I think, not 9 indexers already upgraded. Actually, the top 14 indexers, 13 of them upgraded. So, yeah.
And then Mickey is also asking, so the impression is that a lot of indexers have had trouble upgrading. Is that correct? And is it realistic for us to enforce the 3rd of December deadline if that's the case? Do you have any comments on that?
I think that we are on track to have most of the queries. 100% of the indexers till the December 3rd is kind of hard. So I think that like we can get up to 95% easily, and right now, well, it depends on you guys. We are here to give you support so we can get to the 100%. So Miki asked why 88. So we are reaching out the 𝗨𝗀𝗂𝗪 subgraph to check all of the active indexers. So basically, if they served one query on the last month, that's why it's on that 88 list. We mostly care about queries, and if people who are serving queries are using the newest version, we are happy with that. Thanks.
And then on the questions, if we're reaching out individually to the indexers that haven't upgraded, I don't know. This is still for you, Gustavo.
Yes, we are reaching out, specifically the ones that we have contact, and we have this list, and we reach each of them by the biggest one. So currently the biggest one for us, the biggest two of them that haven't migrated yet are the upgrade indexer and Pnax. So we are working closely to edge a node so they can have support to upgrade to the version 1.0, greater than 1.0. And yeah, that's currently our goal. We go from the most served queries to the least served queries, and we try to go one by one as long as we have contact with those people.
And all indexers are welcome to tag any of us who have already migrated. So Pierre, for example, from ChainStack, who's using the Launchpad chart, has been tagging me, and I've been able to respond to some of his queries. So don't be shy, and no question is, I don't know, silly or anything like that. It's a learning kind of thing. Okay, I don't think there are any more questions, so I'm gonna continue with the notes I had. But yeah, interrupt me and let's keep the conversation going. Okay, so the resources, I'm gonna share this after. But in terms of some of the common issues we've seen, so one of them is that indexers may see that their unaggregated fees may plateau, especially if the RAV request trigger value is set too low. So the RAV request trigger value is what determines when indexers request a RAV, so a receipt aggregate voucher, from a sender. A sender is, you can think of a sender as a gateway. So if the RAV request trigger value is too low, then the trigger will not be met frequently enough, which would cause fees to accumulate without being aggregated. To address this, you want to update your RAV request trigger value, and you updated by updating the values in your configuration of max amount willing to lose GRT and the trigger value divisor. So the trigger value is calculated as a division between these two values. And there is a dashboard. I have it here. In this panel, in the unaggregated fees panel, you can see trigger value. In my case, the trigger value is 3. Trigger RAV is 3.
Sorry to interrupt, Anna. Mickey's just asked if you can zoom in terms of screen, just because it's a little bit hard to see.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, she said thank you. That's much better. Thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks, Anna.
Okay, so what was I saying? You can see here the unaggregated fees and then the trigger value. So my trigger value is 3. The way this works, and please correct me if I say anything wrong, Gustavo, but so as new receipts are received, their values are added to the unaggregated fees. And the system constantly checks if the total unaggregated fees exceeds the trigger value. We've mentioned how the trigger value is calculated, but when a trigger condition is met, what happens is a RAV request is created, and that's done by checking timestamp buffer to determine how far back in time to consider receipts. And it will limit the number of receipts based on a RAV request receipt limit. So if I quickly look at the configuration, there's a few things that are important here. So one is max amount willing to lose GRT, the trigger value divisor, these two determine the trigger value. Then you have the timestamp buffer seconds, which is how far back in time to consider receipts, and then max receipts per second. So in this example config, that a RAV can only contain a maximum of 10,000 receipts. And then there's an additional thing to mention is if any receipts are invalid, they're stored separately in a scalar tab receipts invalid table in indexer metadata database. A receipt is invalid when the max receipt value GRT, so this value, when the value of the receipt is higher than this value. Let's see, there's some typing.
Anna?
Yes.
So I just want to let you to let you understand what's going on here and why do we have lots of configurations. Most of these configurations for most indexers won't be a problem because they don't have too much query volume. But so the thing for us is the following: if you have too many allocations or too many queries per second, things can get a little bit scary, and that's why you need to update and configure those things. Usually, what I recommend for people is try these values first and see. If so, the current default values is 20 max amount willing to lose in GRT, and the divisor is 10. That means that every time the total amount of receipts that you haven't aggregated yet, which we call unaggregated fees, get to 2 GRTs, we try to aggregate. But if that value is constantly above 2, that means that you have way more queries than and also the buffer and all of that stuff. They are so you are constantly above that number. If that is happening, that's when you need to change those things. So you can think about the max amount willing to lose as kind of a runway for an airplane. So you want to have as much as possible to be able to fly, but you don't want to have too much because then you have the whole world to run, and that doesn't make sense. So the maximum willing to lose is the maximum of amount of GRT that you can theoretically lose. So this is what makes TAP, what it makes a minimal trust. The maximum amount you can lose is that value. You won't serve more queries than that value. And you can think about the rev requests as the time, as the airplane taken off. Because if it fails, you have a little bit more runway to try it again and take off after that moment. And if you reach the maximum amount willing to lose, you block the sender. So usually the minimum amount willing to lose, the maximum amount willing to lose, you want to keep as low as possible. So you don't lose money, of course. Nobody wants to lose money. But if you don't have, if a rev request fails, and for example, you receive a lot of receipts on that moment because you are a big indexer, then you will eventually block really quickly the sender, and that's why you need to update those things, because you are receiving too many queries, and then you want to have a little bit more runway. So in case a rev request fails, you can try again in the next moment and take off on that airplane. I hope this little history made sense and was easier to understand why of those values. In general, indexers don't serve too much queries, so they can bother on that. But I'd say that the top 15, top 20 indexers are the ones that will care about that and need to update those values. So what would be your ideal value? Let me check. Trigger value, total unaggregated fees. So on that thing, first of all, there were a few updates. I'm not sure which version you are using right now. I hope it is the latest. But so usually when you get to that trigger rev, it should try to create a rev request. If that's not happening, we need to investigate that. Let me check real quick. And your trigger value is too low. Okay, let me check. So your maximum willing to lose is one. Oh, wait, there. This is different. Got it. So maybe what you could try is the following. So you have this unaggregated fees that is growing. Try to make the trigger value become like about 0.1. If this is not happening, probably there's something that's going on that we probably need to investigate. Advisor and 2. Okay, yeah, here it is. Your trigger divisor is 2, and maximum amount willing to lose is 10 GRT, right? So your trigger value is about 10. Is that all right? So you would only trigger a rev request once you reach 10 GRT, or you reach 10,000 receipts for a given allocation. So because of your query volume, I'd say that like a 0 point something, yeah, this is too much. Probably you could set the maximum willing to lose to about 1 GRT, 2, and the trigger divisor to 10, I guess, and the max receipts per request to 1,000, and that would work. This is like too much. You don't have that many queries per second, so you need to have more rev requests or have a greater trigger value. Yeah, I think like 1 GRT. Yes, 1 GRT, 10 divisor, 1,000 receipts. That's like that's enough for you. So also another thing is this all depends on the amount of allocations that you have open, and the amount of queries per second that you receive, and the amount of queries per second per allocation, and also like bursts that you have. So in TAP, after you aggregate on a certain point, no receipts that contains a timestamp before that point will work. They are considered invalid. So that's why we have this buffer. So we accept receipts till like 60 seconds later, because of course it's hard to synchronize clocks between different computers. So the gateway is sending you receipts, and the gateway is defining what is the timestamp, and it could be like it could send and it's 5 seconds before, or it's 5 seconds after the current clock that you have on your computer, and that's why we have this buffer. So we try to aggregate every receipt that happened before our last rev till the current clock minus the timestamp buffer. And that's why like you can have bursts of queries, and that won't cause errors because we don't want to aggregate that buffer right now. We just want to aggregate until 60 seconds before. So these are the values why we have that. We have a max willing to lose, which is like the runway for you. So in case a rev request fails, you have more space to retry that thing again. The trigger value divisors is because we wanted to tie down, to make sure that the trigger value is really close related to the max willing to lose. And that's why we have a divisor. But you could just think that the trigger divisor is used to calculate when we plan to create a rev request. And we want to do as soon as possible, but not too often, because then you overload and you will have rev requests that have too little receipts. The timestamp buffer is for this. So you want to have ACE to receive receipts and they are not invalid. The request timeout sex is the amount, the time is, so when you have a request, you have a timeout. This is really important. I've seen a lot of people having problems because they have too big rev requests and it takes longer to upload all of the receipts to create the request. The request is bigger. And then you have and you reach the timeout. So if you have bigger receipts per request, you probably also want to have bigger request timeout. And the maximum receipts per request is every time you have a rev request, you send all of those receipts to the gateway so he can calculate that for you and aggregate that for you. And also, this is also limited. So the more receipts that you have on a rev request, the heavier that they get. And then it's harder to send through network. And also, the aggregator has a limit. It won't accept 100 megabytes of receipts because it's also concerned about DOS and things like that. So you want this thing to be a good amount, and we think that from 1,000 to 2,000 is the good amount. But if you have a bigger, so these things is just if you have a, you just want to update those things if you have a bigger indexer. And yeah, so this is the explanation for each of those things. Maybe this is easier for you to understand why we have these values. Why do you want to configure those things, and why would you not want to configure those? In general, we set the default values to be somewhat in the middle, where if you have, I don't know, maybe like 1-2 queries per second, you get one rev request every 15 minutes. This is like a kind of a good amount, but you have less than that, you probably can update this thing to be less amount willing to lose because you don't want to lose money. But if you have more than that, probably you need to update to a little bit more. And you can understand if you need to update this if you have too little rev requests, like if a rev request is once every 1 hour or more or less, so once every 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, probably you can lower those things so you can have more, you can aggregate those things more often. And if you have less than that, so if you are constantly aggregating, so every second, every 2 seconds, probably you want to update those things too. and I hope you understand better all of those values. Yes, that's nice. So what you want to do for your dashboard is the unaggregated fees should always be at that 0.1. So it will, every time you have a rev request, it's gonna be low. It's gonna go down a little bit, and then after like 15 minutes, you had enough receipts that you trigger another rev request. That's your end goal, and this is hard to do automatically. I'm sorry that you have to configure those things, but it's hard because it depends on multiple things and how many queries per second and how many allocations, and yep.
Thank you. I think this is super helpful. Thank you for all of that. And after we post the recording, other people will be able to go back and hear it and hopefully help. Okay. Do we
Thank
have
you
any
for
more
the time.
questions? If there's no more questions right now, one thing that you mentioned was about senders being blocked. So I think I do have. So one of the common issues is seeing a specific sender have been blocked, and there's some reasons why you'd see that. So I think this is still valid with the latest updates. But please correct me, Gustavo, if it's not. But one of the reasons why a sender would be blocked is if sender is not listed in the tap sender aggregator endpoint. If the sender's escrow balance is insufficient to cover any outstanding fees. And another reason would be if the unaggregated fees are exceeding the max fee per sender limit. These are the three main ones. If for this one, if an escrow balance is insufficient for a sender, ideally the sender updates their escrow balance, or you reach out to them to let them know if they haven't figured that out. For sender not listed in tap sender aggregator endpoints, it's important to know that every single sender that has been registered with the escrow contract will appear in your tap agent, and you would usually see an error like this. There was when your tap agent starts, so something that says there was an error while starting the sender. I'm gonna deny it. This example is something that a lot of people has asked about. This one sender is 𝗨𝗶𝗂𝗟𝗶 gateway that is currently being worked on. We have been asked to share our aggregator endpoint, but we're still testing the gateway, so we're not at the point of letting indexers use it. But this is an error that you will see just because your tap agent contacts, I think it's the escrow contract, where it's coming from. So yeah, for any senders not configured either to tap sender aggregator endpoints or via the environment variable format, then you'd see that error. Any comments here? I don't think that the Notion is publicly available, but I'll make sure to make it available. Would you add anything else here, Gustavo?
I think that's it. So the reason why you would not want to deny a sender is either the sender is not paying you, so they don't have enough escrow, or the amount that they credit you reached the maximum you're willing to lose. And a third thing that could happen is we also use the invalid receipts for this. So if the invalid receipts that you have is the amount, it's the maximum amount you're willing to lose, you want you will block the sender because of that. So you can imagine that the sender failed so many times that you're already lost money, and that thing is forever on the max inside the maximum amount you're willing to lose. A quick update on the max receipt. The other configuration thing is that this is just for the service. For TAP to be minimal trust, this must be micropayments. So this is the maximum receipt value that a given receipt, once a gateway sends you a receipt, this is the maximum amount that they will accept. But this is not considered a failed receipt. A failed invalid receipt is those receipts which you received, you had some computation, you served the query, and later on you found out that the receipt is invalid. But all of the receipts that are invalid and we detect right on the request, we just reject the request, and it doesn't count for the invalid receipt.
And for the invalid receipts, if any of the conditions change, would they become valid, or is it that once a receipt has been marked as invalid, there's no retry?
There is no retry. That table is just used first for logging, so you can understand. You can go to the database and see what's going on, why my receipts are failing, and understand. Sometimes it will be like the signature is invalid, or the escrow is not doesn't have enough money. But once we aggregate a new rev and we discard those receipts, they will never be able to be valid again. So in case you just accept that you lost those receipts, the only way to reset that is deleting and understanding that you lost those receipts and you are willing to lose, and you are you are accepting that you lost, and then you don't want those to be counted on inside your maximum willing to lose.
That makes sense. Thank you. And also on the tab dashboard, you can see whether a sender has been blocked as well. Okay. Then other things I had here. There's a common error that you will continue to see even with the tab migration, and this is on Indexer Agent. So currently, Indexer Agent still expects either the CLI flag of collect receipts endpoint or gateway endpoint. So it's important to know here that even when you set these flags, you will still have an error on startup of Indexer Agent that says something like the option collect receipt endpoint is deprecated. That is fine. You still need to use this flag for now, but just so you know, like this is a non-error, something that will probably be fixed at some point. Just because there was a question about this on Discord and it's sort of obscure knowledge. Okay, let me see. And then, yeah, in terms of metrics, all of the components expose metrics on port 73,000 for Prometheus. The Grafana dashboard that I'm showing is embedded in the Launchpad charts chart. it is available on the indexer repo somewhere. I'll find it straight away. Wait, I have the link here. So it's available on the indexer repo, and it's also embedded in the Pain's stack. So you can find it in many places. And I think this is all I have that I prepared. So I see another question. Right now, until December 3rd, only one sender is active. That is correct as far as I know. So it's only the Edge and Node sender that is actively, that is the one that everyone is using. GraphOps, we're hoping for end of December to early January to onboard some indexers on our gateway. And then the other question, is this good? So using gateway endpoint, or should I revert to activate collect receipt endpoints? Using gateway endpoint is fine. It's basically the only thing that you needed to know is that it's your choice which CLI flag you use, but you'll see the same error regardless, and it's a confusing error. So you don't have to do anything here. Okay, any more questions? Also, any comments from some of the indexers that have already migrated of obscure things they found that they might want to share? I see Vince, Mark Andre, anyone else if you have anything to add.
Seems like Mark Andre's typing, so we'll let him finish that. And so is Vince. In the meantime, great job, guys. I think you guys are doing a great job answering questions, and it seems like people are kind of coming up with questions on the fly, which is great. Mark Andre responded, they're saying it's crucial to have a dashboard set up and monitoring. It's getting more stable with every release, but you never know. Yeah, fair enough. That's a really good point. Okay, and Anna's just shared the Notion page as well, so you guys can check it out there. Thanks so much for sharing, Anna. Vince is also typing. Oh, got to jump. Okay, cool. Lovely to see you, Mickey. Thanks for making it. Appreciate it. All right, Vince is typing. Let's see. Yeah, to migrate to Tap, but I'll be doing it soon. Been dealing with my future info. Okay, cool. 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 Any more questions folks have before we wrap today's conversation? What's the oh yeah. It's usually in the Notion page, but I will paste it here. The POAP is block by block. Yes, that's correct. That is correct. There you go. Shit, the mint window. Damn it. Okay. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, okay, cool. That's thanks for reminding Gemma. We'll get that sorted. I definitely need that. Fair enough, yeah. Just time change. I forgot to sort the put up stuff out. Okay, cool. We'll get that sorted. So just I guess put a calendar reminder for 6:45 p.m. UTC so that you can get the put up, because it is valid. It does work. It's just not calibrated on time. All right. We want to throw it back to Anna and Gustavo if you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap today's conversation.
I don't have anything. So, Gustavo, if you have anything.
No, I don't have. Just want to thank you for the time that you gave us here to explain more about TAP. What were the design choices, why we have these configurations, and in case anyone has any feature request, or maybe you have a better idea on how to configure this, feel free to create issues inside IndexerRS, graph protocol/IndexerRS. We are happily taking a look on every issue, every feature request, and trying to make the system better, the stack more stable, and yeah, hopefully we get to a better point. Thanks, Anna, to sharing this. And yeah, thank you again for the time.
You're very welcome. And yeah, thanks for sharing the link there, Anna. And yeah, thanks both of you for doing such a great job with the comprehensive responses to people's questions. I guess what could maybe be useful is if we continue doing a smaller segment of this for every IOH up until the 3rd of December, which I think just one, if I'm not mistaken. I have to check the calendar. Where are we at? So we got one next week. Yeah. So there'll be IOH 20 on the 26th of November, and then the 3rd of December. So maybe, yeah, one on the 3rd and one on the 26th. So yeah, maybe what we'll do is, if you guys are cool with that, Gustavo and Anna, feel free to come along for those two IOHs. We'll have other agenda items, but like maybe we'll carve out an extra 5 minutes from those IOHs just to dedicate to TAP questions, or we can have people ask them in the chat. I think just generally kind of keeping the conversation going until the migration could be useful. Okay, good. Sounds good. Amazing. All right.
Sure.
Well, thank you both for going to detail there with TAP, and thank you each and every one of you for joining us on today's IOH session. Yeah, I think that was really informative. I learned a lot about TAP, so I hope you guys did too. And as we said, we'll make this a recurring thing until the 3rd going forward. So there you have it. Alrighty. We wish you a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you again. Remember, it's 5 p.m. UTC, not 6 p.m. UTC. We recently changed. Next week. Cool. Take care, everyone, and have a lovely rest of your week. Bye-bye.